Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon session of a Writers Club. Very happy to welcome Akhila Ismail. Just briefly, Akhila Ismail was assistant professor at NED and has taught there for many years. She's currently in Abu Dhabi, and she's also the author of Martyrs and Marigold. And that book is to be launched during this KLF. I hope some of you will be able to attend that. So very briefly, just to say welcome. Akhila will lead you through this 2-hour session. During this session, we will have other writers join us who will then talk about the work that they have done. May I ask all of you to move up forward so that we don't, the empty seats in between are taken up. Please come up forward. And maybe in the interactive session that Akhila will take, we'll ask you where, sort of which institutions, if you're students, etc., so you can tell if you're from different institutions. But please move up, those in the center. Can I quickly do that so we can start? Because it's nice to have everybody up front. It just makes the whole session tick better. And then a very important announcement, please turn off your mobiles, because it's very disturbing in between to have that on and you're texting and you're talking and all that. I'm sorry, it's not like a class, but it's just that you're here for a purpose and we'd like to get that moving. Can you move up, people at the back? Please come up front wherever the seats are. Please move up quickly. Thank you. Please, there are some seats here as well, so that those who come late can sit at the back. Just move up quickly.
And a lot of guidance is required, because writing is a very reclusive activity. I mean, you do this totally on your own. You cannot be distracted when you're writing. You have your thoughts around you, etc. So the idea of the Writers Club, and I already run one in Abu Dhabi where I live currently. What we do is, can we help each other through the process of understanding how to proceed in a certain manner. Now, by writing here, we do not mean only creating novels or short stories, because that is a very important part of creative writing. But with the new phenomenon of blogging, we have in our club in Abu Dhabi several bloggers who also want to learn how to write, because whether you're writing fiction or non-fiction, there is a kind of craft involved. I mean, writing is both an art and a craft. So in order to learn the craft of writing, in order to help each other out, in order to overcome mental blocks, this is what we created, the Writers Club. And we hope to do the same here with all of you. And also, we think that writing is 100% inspiration or 90% inspiration. It's only 1% inspiration. The rest of it is a lot of hard work. And you will find a lot of doubt in you when you're writing. And when you are overcome with doubt, this is where the club, with people like you who have doubts themselves, will be able to help you through the process. Now, as far as creativity is concerned, as far as writing of fiction is concerned, you will... as writers, it would be a very good idea to learn the history of the novel, for example, to learn how the novel came about, to learn how the short story as a form, how did it develop over the ages. And of course, you can never do without reading past masters in this art. I mean, you cannot just say, because I know the language that I'm going to write in. I mean, you could be writing in any of the languages of the world. You could be writing in English, in French, in Arabic, in Urdu, in Saraiki, in Sindhi, in whichever language that you choose. But there is no vocabulary, there is no language which is enough to put all your thoughts on paper. You will always have to learn, and it is a continuous process of learning, and it's a pleasurable thing to do, because while you are learning the craft, you're also enjoying the writing. And it has to be from past masters, and by past masters I mean those people whose works have survived through the years, through centuries even. I mean, and it doesn't always have to be past masters. It can be somebody whose work you admire, somebody whose work you have been touched by. it can be all of those things or some of those things. So it is a lot of hard work. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is I recently have published a novel, and I'm going to tell you very briefly of the process that I went through in order to create that piece of writing that ultimately was read by the others. It's a very secluded exercise. Now, what happened was when I decided to write this novel, it's called Of Martyrs and Marigolds. Now, this is based on a conflict that took place in 1971, in which one part of Pakistan, that is East Pakistan, became Bangladesh. So, and that was a conflict to which I am a witness and a survivor. So that was something that for 40 years I've been wanting to write about this, but it didn't happen. But when I started writing about it, I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and without thinking of what form it will take, what shape I'm going to give it. So it was basically personal memories in the beginning. It started off as that, and then when I went back, when the frenzy stopped, when the frenzy of writing stopped, then I went back and I tried to read the work, and I said, this is absolute unmitigated rubbish. I mean, there was no coherence to it. There was nothing of what I really wanted to say. But I went through that process. I wrote. I put it down on paper. Now, the first act as a writer is to write. You have to put it down on paper. So whatever you do, now, of course, you don't put it down on paper, you type it. So, in fact, I have forgotten how to write with a pen now because everyone types now. In any case, so, but because that bulk of writing, I wrote about 250,000 words. And it's so easy to count when you're writing, right? Now, you don't have to do it manually anymore. So, but my book now is only 97,000 words. So I wrote 250,000 plus rubbish, absolutely, but it was all there. It was on paper. I had emptied my mind, my emotions, my feelings, my knowledge, my information that I had about the story that I wanted to write about. It was all on paper in black and white. It was out there. Okay, now it was up to me to give it a shape, because when I was writing for myself. You see, they say that you write for yourself, but you edit into the universe. Because when you put it out there, it's out into the universe. So you're writing for yourself. So that always has to be the first act that you do. And that is that you write for yourself, unto yourself, but you edit into the universe. So you show it into the universe. Now, so because I thought I absolutely did not know how to write, it was totally, I could not do it. But the thing is, I had a story to tell. There was a story that I needed to tell, which is why then I went back to learning the craft of fiction, how to write, give it shape. And the first thing I did was I went back to the people that I had loved and read and admired over the years. And I went back to not the English novel. I was writing in English. I did not go back to the English novel, by Charles Dickens or Thomas Hardy. We had read all of them in literature classes in school, and maybe that's why one doesn't want to go back to them, because you're made to read them. But the novels that I had read subsequently for pleasure, and my most admired writer, who I admired the most, was Tolstoy. When I was growing up in the 1960s and 70s, in Dhaka, we had this library which was filled with Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and French writers like Stendhal and Proust. And so, we were introduced, we sort of knew about these writers and we read them. So the book that had the most effect on me, and I thought was a perfect piece of writing, it was a perfect novel, was War and Peace. Now, War and Peace is 1,500 pages long. And, to read it is very arduous. But, when you want to learn how to write, You have to read every word that has been written. And this time when I was reading it, at first I read it for pleasure, but then when I was reading it to learn how to write. I wanted to see how Tolstoy, for example, in War and Peace, he brings, he has hundreds of characters in that novel of his, if you're familiar with War and Peace. I mean, आपने फिल्में भी शायद देखी होंगी उस पे. बहरहाल, they have hundreds of characters there are, and it was a time of both war and of peace. I mean, it could very well have been two novels into one. So, I wanted to see how is it that he is able to introduce so many characters in so many places, and yet the reader, when the reader encounters that character, let's say after 100 pages, the reader knows exactly where he had encountered him first. He knows, because that's how he has built it up. So, I tried to take notes, I tried to learn how do you create drama, how do you create a picture, how do you create an image, how do you create dialogue, because that's the most difficult to do. But the most important thing that I discovered was that ultimately a novel or a short story, any work of fiction, what is the basic, the total rock bottom definition of a novel? That it tells a story. It has to have a story. It tells a story. So, the aspect of the novel or the aspect of the short story would be that it must, the story. I'm emphasizing on the story because the story could be something very simple. And it is the plot which makes that story possible. You see, you have to distinguish between the story and the plot. So, I want to tell you now that there are 5 or 6 aspects that you have to look at when you're writing. You will have to first look at whether you have a story to tell. Now, the story could be as simple as the king died and the queen died. That's a story, But what is the plot? The plot is that the king died and the queen died of grief. That's a plot. Then you'll have to tell me what was the grief, what happened. Or the queen died, the king died, and the queen died soon after she met her stepson. You'd wonder what it was that happened, that she also dies. So this is then the plot. I'm talking very simplistically, of course, And so there has to be a story. The story has to be carried by a plot. The plot is, what were the circumstances, who's the antagonist, who's the protagonist, is there drama, is there no drama, is there a picture to be made, is there no picture to be made, do you put the character in a geographical location, do you put the character in time, do you put the character in space, you have to think of it. But remember, these things you don't think of when you are writing initially. Initially, जब आप लिख रहे हो, तो you just write. You just write, you have a story, and that story will grow organically in your mind, but you just write. And then to give it structure, then you think of these things. Okay, now that I have this story, I have all this down. Now I'm going to give it a time sequence, for example, because the most difficult thing and also the most essential thing in a story is its time sequence. That how do you show time passing? For example, in War and Peace, the characters are introduced to you when they're teenagers. And by the end of the book, they have grown old. So how do you show this passage of time while at the same time not saying that they have grown old? You don't say, she was 16 and now she's 50. You don't say that. 50 is not old, of course, but you don't say that. So essentially, how do you carry time forward? Now, carrying time forward doesn't mean you have to go chronologically. You don't have to, go in time sequence. You can go backwards, forwards, up, down, whichever way. But in your mind, you have to still keep the time sequence intact. Like, for example, people say, André Gide, for example, this person who wrote The Counterfeiter, very famous. If you want to read him, you must read him as a most fantastic time sequence protagonist, because he says that, and his hero is a novelist. So he says, I'm going to write a novel in which time is going to be cut up it's not going to be lateral, it's going to be up and down, and I'm going to shred it up. And this is what we see in a lot of modern novels. You see the stream of consciousness that they write as it comes, as it happens. So these are all forms that you can think of, but you have to have a story, you have to have a plot, you have to have people in your novel, and the people must do some kind of acts which make the story go forward, and then you must have pattern in your writing, that there must be a pattern, and there must be rhythm in your language. So in order to create the rhythm, you have to start reading it to yourself, so that the language resonates within you. So these are the things that you have to take care of when you're writing, and it doesn't come easy, but it's not difficult as well. It's very easy. It's easy in the sense that if you have a mastery of language, whichever language you're writing in, that mastery of language is essential, because this is an art where you are using the same form as your object uses. For example, if you're doing a painting, or you're doing a work of, if you're doing a sculpture, then it's not the form in which that person is thinking. I mean, it's wood, it's paint, etc. But writing mein kya hai? Writing mein you're using the tools that the soul uses to express itself. Is it not? I mean, you're using that. And remember also that in the novel, in the creative process, you have to also be very truthful. Now, by truth, I don't mean कि आप truthful to your character. I don't mean truthful in the moral sense. It's not the moral sense. Truthful in the sense that fiction always is not just the art of, it's not just what is there, but it is the art of what could be. That is why in fiction you have animals talking. You have people talking to God. You have, they say that the easiest thing to write about is birth and death. What does writing consist of? Birth, death, food, sleep, and love. I mean, essentially, agar aap dekhen to yahi hai na cheezein, कि you talk of a person is born, then a person dies, a person eats. I mean, a lot of books are written on food. Food is a very important part of our life, and you sleep, because there is a lot of things that happen in your sleep. You dream. I mean, your dream is such an essential part of fiction, of imagination, and in novels you can use a dream sequence to create anything. You've seen it in films. They use a dream sequence to create what cannot be said of the character. I mean, love in all its forms has been written about from times immemorial. You have seen that it carries a plot through, a love story. Now, a love story is not necessarily just love between a man and a woman, or a man and a man and a woman and a woman. It's all kinds of love. It's parental love, it's brotherly love, etc., etc. So these are the things that you write about, but it is the variety. Everyone writes about this, but it is the manner in which your story unfolds, because na to birth ke baare mein kisi ko pata hai. A woman can tell you of her experience of birth, but because the child who's born he cannot express what has happened. Neither do you know anything about death, because you don't know what happens after death. So these are two unknowns, but all your stories move from birth to death, which means it moves between two unknowns, between one darkness and another darkness, But in between, you use your imagination. Yeah, of course, this is how it must be. This is how it will be. So, and this is the kind of liberty that fiction allows you. And the truth in fiction is the different from truth in reality. I mean, truth in reality is कि ये चीज़ exist करती है यहाँ. But in fiction, you can say, does it really? I mean, it could just be that I'm imagining it, or it could be, आजकल जो, and a lot of science fiction is based on that, on this absolute vivid imagination. What can be, what could be. In fact, you do know that science always starts with art, because the art says or fiction says that we put a man on the moon. I mean, that is how it started with Jules Verne, who said the man on the moon. And then science then takes it up and says, yes, this is the imagination, you can do it. And then you do it, So science normally follows. But the act of creating the novel or act of creating a story is not just some inspiration that will come to you. Inspiration is a very big part of it. But inspiration will not come fully formed. It will not come to you and say, okay, this is the manner in which I will write it. The inspiration will come to you in the form of a newborn child, who doesn't know, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to nurture it. So it's how you nurture that inspiration, that story, which will make you a good writer or a not so good writer. But remember that good writer and bad writer is a very subjective thing, because it depends on your reader, who's who, the person who's reading it, And when you write, you're not going to think that, what is my reader going to think? Because you're writing for yourself, But when you're editing for the universe. Now the trick here is that you think of a fictitious reader, or let's say a model reader, your own model reader, who you think is going to read it, who in your mind you feel is going to read it, and you accordingly edit and reshape the story according to what you think that reader, who you may or may not ever encounter, who may or may never read your book. But these are the tricks that you sort of use in order to be able to give the story a form. So this is the manner in which I did my book, and it's a very it's not a cathartic process. Especially when you're writing about your own experiences, it sometimes brings closure, sometimes it does not. And it need not be something that has happened to you, but it could be just any story that you want to tell. But remember that a novel will always tell a story. So now the idea of the Writers Club, of course, is that you will register with us, here, and we will keep in touch. We will meet once in 2 months, and we will, and you can read out your work, and we will also give you small exercises to do while reading. For example, one of the exercises that we are doing now in my Writers Club there is that we say that there are 3 people who are in a room, and they've just had a meal together. You decide who those people are, what ages, etc., and you give us 500 words of dialogue between them. So you create that exercise for them. So we will be over the next year give you exercises to do, which will help you in putting your craft together. You have the art, but this will help you in putting the craft of writing together, so that you are able to then do things with a little more confidence. You're on the right track. There's not going to be any critique of your work. I mean, nobody has the right to critique other people's work. The idea is to learn from each other and to guide each other and to help each other. And we will try to get established writers on board who will see you through the process. They will not write for you. They will not criticize your work. Your work is your own. And this is how we intend to proceed with the club as such. So I was told that there are some works that people have brought. They're welcome to read it here. And I will try and tell you what maybe needs to be done further on your work, or how you can build it up, and how you can give it a better shape. So that is the idea of this session. So anyone, have they registered with you? Not yet? So in any case, for people who have works, who have brought anything, 500 words, 200 words, or even people who've got an idea of what they want to write about, we can discuss this so that it becomes a two-way, multiple-way session. And you could want to become bloggers if you want. I mean, you don't have to become novelists. You can become poets, You can have, you can be short story writers. You can be non-fiction writers. But eventually the act of writing means you need to know the craft. So if there is anyone who has brought together any piece of work that they would like to read here, I would ask you to please raise your hands. Anyone? आपके पास कुछ लिखा हुआ है? आइए. No. I mean, the thing is also, you know, because you're going to put your words out there, needs a lot of courage. Yeah? Why don't you use this mic? You have to introduce yourself and also tell us what your aspirations are as a writer.
Okay. My name is Usman Hanif, and I've been working on a draft of a novella, and hopefully someday it'll get published.
Of course it will.
So it's, I can just maybe read the first two paragraphs, if that's okay, so that it's other people get an opportunity to also embarrass themselves. Okay. The monsoons are greeted with reverential joy across Islamabad. They signal the end of endless stifling summer days. Children rush to play in the street, soaking themselves in the welcome respite from the scorching South Asian sun. Drains overflow and traffic slows to a crawl as drivers desperately attempt to see past the barrage of raindrops smacking against their windshield. Despite the inconvenience, even these travelers secretly welcome the monsoon. The season covers Islamabad with a rejuvenating and refreshing ocean. Parched grassy fields glow with a renewed emerald vitality, and fading colors and aging buildings regain a sliver of their lost selves. Yet there are also those for whom the ephemeral silver clouds of the monsoon carry dark tidings. These people desperately struggle to prevent their homes, livelihoods, and even themselves from being swept away by the unrelenting purging floods. Okay, that's
That was your opening paragraph?
That's the opening. It's a semi-prologue type paragraph, but yeah. And then there's like a dash to sort of indicate sort of a separation of sorts. Abai anxiously awaited the monsoon. She missed the smell of freshness in the air after a storm, and she longed to eat every hue and variety of mango, from auburn to lime, in the cool veranda as the storm raged on outside. Sikandar had told her there would not rain today. The man on the news had said so. It was all very scientific, he had explained. Abai told him he was wrong because she had dreamt of a fantastic storm last night. She didn't dream that often anymore, but when she did, her dreams would be so vivid that Abai would wander around the house the next morning, convinced that the events from the dream had actually transpired. Everyone would tell her that it was simply a dream until it became a reality. Then they would explain her visions away with a discussion about luck and chance. Abai did not bother arguing with them. She had visions and no science could explain that. That morning, Sikandar had complained that she was living in a fantasy world. Sometimes fantasy is more real than reality, she told the young boy, who simply rolled his eyes. She ached for an earlier time, but she didn't have to explain herself to the boy so much. I think I'll just stop there.
I found there's a lot of poetry in what you write, which is very, very good. And the only thing was that in the beginning, you know, the thing is, in order to draw the readers in, you know, you have to immediately set the story. You know, so maybe it would have been a good idea for you to bring in your characters right in the beginning. You know, so you know, like I was telling you about Tolstoy. You know, what he did in the first chapter, he brought in all the characters. How did he bring it in? He had a party in which all these people came, you know, and how they interacted with each other. But there is such sheer poetry in what he is writing. So there is so much potential in what you are writing. And you know, what I would advise you to do is to initially, is this the first draft?
Yeah, I mean, I've been revising, tinkering with it.
Yes, but your story is complete. Your novella is complete. And now you're giving it a form.
Right, now I'm trying to edit it out and give it some...
Give it a form, huh? Right? And so because he's got the writing down. That's for sure. He has that capacity. He has that mastery of language. He has the imagination and the poetry of it. He has to give it a form, and now you have to imagine somebody reading it. Now it's up to you who's reading it. It could be your mom, it could be, it's a terrible thing to ask your mom to read, because there are so many inhibitions when you ask your mom to read, yes.
I've heard that you're supposed to imagine that your parents and family members.
No, don't ever do that, because, at my age, when I was writing, I was also thinking about, is my mother going to be okay with this? But no, don't do that. What you have to do is you have to have a model reader. It's somebody who you think your reader should be. It doesn't have to have a face, it doesn't have to have a station in life, but it could be somebody who's who you think should be a reader, your reader, and to do it to that. Yes.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. You mentioned the passage of time and how
Yes,
Tolstoy captured it in War and Peace. And I read it, but I don't remember. This novella does take place over several years.
Yes.
So my question is, how does Tolstoy usually address the issue of passage of time in a subtle way, which isn't sort of knocking it over the reader's head?
Yes. The passage, that is the most difficult thing to do, of course, without telling people that the time has passed like that. But the way Tolstoy does it, and the way Stendhal does it, the way Proust does it, the way Dostoevsky does it, the way Charles Dickens does it, anyone, you have to read, you have to go through them. But the way he does it, Tolstoy does it, is that in between the characters reappearing in the novel, there are things that have happened. For example, the Russian Revolution, the war, the great Indo-Prussian War has taken place. So that has taken place, that historical event has taken place. And because that historical event has taken place over a few months or years, when the character comes back, you know that the time has passed. And also, you tell them through the changes in the manner in which they behave. You don't have to say he's an old man, but you can say that, he flicked back his graying hair, for example, or that, little aches and pains here and there. Now, the other thing in terms of character is that the reader must be able to picture your character. You can't just say Sikandar. Right in the beginning, you have to give the reader a picture of Sikandar. Now, you don't have to say he was tall and dark and handsome or whatever. You can say that he moved with such, his lithe form unfolded. He was sitting in a chair with his legs, with his short legs crossed over. Something that will give me a picture, an immediate picture. It has to be just a few words, but it's always very important to give the picture of the character. That what that character looks like, by not describing him, but by some movement or by some gesture that will anchor the character in the story. So, these things then help in creating that image. So, there is a picture to be made, then there is action, and there are scenes, and there is dialogue. So, what normally, you don't have to follow this, but what normally happens in traditional novels, that you set a scene. You set a scene कि it was by the riverside या जहाँ भी था. You set a space. What is the space? And then you create the dialogue and culminates in an action. So it helps a little bit to follow this sequence. You paint a picture, then you create a dialogue, and then you conclude it. Then you go to the next scene. So you work from scene to scene to scene, not necessarily chronologically.
Right.
You can go up and down, whatever. But you have it. Work on it. Very good. Yes. Is there any other brave soul? Yes.
As part of reporting and journalism,
Yes.
as part of reporting and journalism, what aspects of creative writing should be utilized? Like for feature writing and...
Yes. For reporting in journalism, there is just a little difficulty. You can't use your imagination as much. because you're supposed to record the truth. And fiction does not always talk of the truth. You can't use your imagination, but you have to use your language skills, your mastery of your language. I mean, you can say something straight, you know, this, like the king died and the queen died afterwards, or you can say the king died and the queen died of grief. You know, this is, so you embellish it. You embellish your writing, and this can only come about if you have a mastery of language, whichever language you're writing on. And how does the mastery of language come? You're not taught. You read. You read and you read and you read and you read. And reading is such a pleasure. You read whatever you want to read. It's not that text diya hua hai ki aap ye padhe. I told you about what I read and reread and made notes, you know. But you can read whatever, and there is no shortcut to being able to write. You have to read. So I gather you're a journalist, or aspiring to be one. Oh, great. Yes, yes. That's another thing, you know, can writing be taught? Can creative writing be taught? I don't think so. I don't think it can be taught. I mean, in the West, there have been many creative writing courses that have been conducted, and people have taken that. But if you recall all the modern novels that have come out of the Indo-American axis, that have been formulaic, it's like masala, you know, formulaic. कि वो बिल्कुल formula पे होता, cut and dried. Now, you know, I mean, I want something more than cut and dried. I want to feel good. I want to feel sad. I want to feel happy with the character. I want to feel sad with the character. So it's not just कि ये हुआ और ये नहीं हुआ, but you know, that everything around it. That's another thing, you know, when you have the basic plot of a story, you know, there are so many fringe things that happen. There are so many side characters that happen. As a story writer, it is up to you to decide how far you will go. What is the fringe? I mean, for you, for example, आपका नाम क्या था? Usman, yes. For Usman, for instance, he's got Sikandar there. Now, Sikandar has been through life. He has all these characters and happenings around him. Now, it's up to you to decide कि आप कितना दूर जाएंगे. You know, there are all concentric circles with Sikandar at the center. So you have to decide how far you will go in your, because sometimes you go too far. Then you lose the plot. You can't lose the plot. Remember, you have to keep the plot intact. Your story, you know, and also, you know, when you begin writing, you don't have to figure everything out before you start writing. You don't. Like I said, you write for yourself. You write. And something organically will happen from there. And once it happens organically, you know what you're writing about, and then you give it a shape. Yes, there was,
yeah.
Yes.
When you say you edit for the universe, right? When you write, you have a certain target audience in mind, vis-a-vis age, or you write just for the universe?
You know, it's totally up to you. For example, when I started to write my memoir, it started off as a memoir. I can tell you my own experience and the experiences of some of my friends who are also writers, that it started off as a memoir for my daughters, and I wanted to put together the family history, and then it took on a life of its own. Then it became something bigger than what it was, and then it also turned from a memoir to a novel. Now, a memoir is something that is exclusive to your memory, but a novel, remember, fiction allows you all kinds of freedom. I mean, you can have so many shades in between. It's totally up to you. And also remember that अगर आपने सारी conflicts के ऊपर आपने novels पढ़े होंगे ना, the wars, for example, the First World War, the Second World War, our own War of Independence, in our own, and then what happened in Bangladesh, and then the Iraq war that is taking place, the Palestinian conflict, etc. You know that history doesn't record the human condition. It is fiction which records the human condition. History will only tell you, ye date pe ye hua, or itne log mare, and this leader did this and this thing. But fiction will tell you what happened to the individual. And you are then able to take care of all the shades, of all the nuances of human conditions that are necessarily present in life and necessarily present in the conflict. It's not black and white. Even political conflict is never black and white. But history does not record it. It is fiction which records it. The best understanding of the wars, the best understanding of colonialism has come through works of fiction. I mean, nothing could be greater than to understand the colonial mind than reading Through the Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. You understand the brutality of the conquest that took place of the Belgium. The Belgians, when they for the sake of ivory, etc., what they did. But that is brought forth to you in that small novel. So while you could read history, of course you should read history. You could base your novel on history, but it has to be again about the human condition or the animal condition. I mean, you can do either way. Yes. So is there anyone else who wants to read? Do you want to read a piece?
I did not bring any piece with me, but I have written a few short stories.
Yes. Oh, great. Yes, absolutely. Can you come over here? Do you blog as a hobby or as a profession?
It's a hobby.
Yes.
But I have been also called for professional
Blogging?
for professional coverage of certain events.
Okay.
Although I don't charge for that.
Yes.
But I try to.
There is a difference between being a columnist and a blogger.
Yes.
So you do know that a blogger is more in real time. Yes.
Yes. Actually, I started writing a novel a couple of years back. The problem is that while traveling from Larkana to Karachi,
Yes.
we were robbed in Midway.
Oh my
and,
goodness.
With my laptop, I had a register in which I was writing the story. So when the laptop was taken away, I lost the story as well.
There's your story, my goodness. I mean, he has a story within the story itself, yes.
So since then, I could not get the same kind of mindset to rewrite the same story. But I'm trying to go back to the same mindset.
Of course.
And I've started writing short stories.
One good idea whenever you're writing, this is what I did when I was working on my laptop with those horrible 250,000 words which I wrote of rubbish. I kept sending it to myself. You keep sending it to yourself and to a friend if a friend is, available, asking them not to read it, of course, but you keep sending it to yourself. That way it's in cyberspace. You can get it back whenever you want.
Actually,
so
I did.
life is fraught with dangers. So maybe that is what you should do next.
Actually, yes, I actually had a few chapters of it with my friend. The problem is I wrote it in register with handwritten. I lost the backstory.
Oh God,
That's the main
yes. So
issue.
can you read your blog?
All right. This is a story. I've been reading half of it. It's called Challenge. And apology if I'm not a very good speaker or aspiring one. Right. The wait was unnerving. I was sitting in the cubicle for the past quarter of an hour, imagining the scenario that may unfold. I wish I had a bad habit, like nail biting or lip chewing, anything to pass the time. In times like these, even habits betray you, and I had enough on my mind already. Footsteps sounded outside as someone pulled open the door moments later. Professor Alia entered, with her lips thin and frown stern, and she took her seat. She had a way to make you feel you did something wrong even when everything was right. Today, however, nothing was as it should have been, and for the first time I felt her expression was justified. I have no idea what you want to do with your life, she said in her crisp tone. I stared down at my feet, unable to answer. My worst fear seems to have come true. You have been acting irresponsibly for such a long time that you have successfully jeopardized your future, she continued. I am afraid you have failed this course as well. You may as well say goodbye to this degree because administration will soon be notifying you of expulsion. I continued to stare at my feet. I heard her take a deep breath, probably controlling her anger. I didn't care anyway. Silence hung in the air. There wasn't anything for me to ask. I saw no reason to even stay in the seat, listening to another lecture.
I've always been well behaved with teachers though, and it would have been rude to simply walk away, so I stayed until she would dismiss me. As I wondered how long will it take for her to ask me to leave, she spoke in a milder tone. When you first came to my class, in your first semester, I had never experienced a livelier student than you. You were not like the usual top graders who were exceptionally skilled at memorizing books or begging for grades. You excelled at challenging the teachers, forcing us to raise our bar in order to teach you. What happened? Where did that boy go? He just didn't have much to do, Professor. He changed in what I am today. No one simply changes. You weren't the one of those who were confused, she said irritably. I used to dread teaching your class because your questions often made me doubt my own sanity and sometimes even education qualification. You reminded me of my own mentor who challenged my every concept and belief. I had hopes for you. Sorry, it was all that I could mumble. Well, sorry won't cut it. You decided to skip personal effort for good and ruin your marks in the process. Both are directly proportional. Young man, you have failed, she said. My apologies, Professor. I don't agree with your premise, I said without realizing what I was saying. My mind was suddenly racing, words coming out of my mouth as if my body decided to rebel against me. There was a sudden silence in the cubicle. It must have caught her by surprise, since I hadn't said this sentence in the last 2 years. Well then, let's hear your theory. You believe personal efforts and gaining marks are not directly proportional? She asked curiously, slightly hinted of amusement in her voice. On the contrary, I agree that they are proportional. I disagree that I failed. I heard a thump as papers fell on the table in front of me.
Yeah. This is a very good example of using dialogue. I mean, the story is moving forward in terms of dialogue. He's the interchange between the professor and the teacher, the student. The only problem here is that, when you talk of dialogue, you must also imagine, can this be said by that character? That is where the truth in fiction arises. Can my character XYZ, whoever that character is, placed in that situation, can that character say this? For example, when the teacher says, you set the bar very high for us, that sounds a little improbable, but this is something that the other character could have said. That yes, I think, I think, she doesn't want to confront me, because I question her, etc. Now this also brings us to dialogue, because dialogue is very tricky. There is always but you've done it very successfully, I might add. You have a tendency to say he said and she said. He said and then she said and then they said or whatever. Now this is a trap. This is a trap when you're writing dialogue. You have to be very careful not to say these things, especially when there are dialogues being conducted between two people. It's fine, because you lay out the premise in the beginning and that's how it is. But when there are more than two people, you have to know. So that is where you give a voice. Everyone has a unique voice, so that the reader will recognize that this is the voice of this person. So you can use words like remarked, commented, stuff like that, but it is always better that the remark should come from within the dialogue itself. The comment should come, the question should come. You don't say, she asked this question, no. But the dialogue itself has to be the question. So, that what happens is, this takes away a lot of the extra words that you tend to put in. For example, the word the. The word the is the most misused word in the English language. And you will be surprised at the number of the's that you put in your script. And when you remove those the's, how beautifully it reads. So please avoid the and that. And things like that. And even words like is, you try to minimize these words which are so repetitive. But the is the word which is the most difficult to use and the most misused words. So when you do a word search, word count and you see how many the's you have used and then reduce it by half. Do that. You'll see how beautifully your script will read after that. Yes, it's fantastic. Yes. I hope you get your script back. Yes. You'd like to read?
Hello, my name is Mariam Badr. This was basically a thought and that I wrote. I'm not a very good reader and I'm a shy person, so please excuse that. I grew up listening. ये ज़माना नहीं है किसी के साथ अच्छाई करने का. लोगों को उंगली पकड़ाओ, हाथ पकड़ते हैं, हाथ दो तो गला पकड़ते हैं. सीधे लोगों को कोई जीने नहीं देता. लोगों के साथ चलना है तो उनकी तरह चालाक बनो. People will use you like a tissue paper and throw you away when they are done with you. They were not wrong, but this doesn't mean that they were right. You be clever, selfish, see personal benefit in everything, and you get a living, but not a life. Adding more, this living will only increase another soul to the world that is already terribly infected with apathy. And the worst part, people are oblivious of it. Apathy is an infection of heart, mind, and soul. Your one word, one comment, your one action can make or break people. Either you can become a part of the infected world, or your one kind act to someone can cure a heart, mind, and soul of one or more infected people. Don't ignore. Be the change you want to see in this world. Play your part. You may not realize, but a little act of kindness can do much good to the world. That's it.
Yes. Yes. I like the way she used both languages. She used both languages where it was necessary. The Urdu, where it made more drama then, it wouldn't have made that kind of a dramatic appeal if it had been written in English, that part of it. The only thing is, this is expository writing. You are expressing a thought. And as you said before, rightfully, that you're expressing a thought. Now, when you're expressing a thought and when you're exposing, the trick is not to sound cliched. For example, you use the word, you use them like tissue paper and throw it away. That is a cliche, no? So it is better always to avoid cliches and be more original in your exposition. Now remember this, when you're writing about a novel or a story, there is always the tendency to become expositional. Now in a novel, you must never do that. When I was doing my work, because it is based on such an intense conflict that took place, and there was so much politics, there was Bhutto here, and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman there, and General Yahya there, and Indira Gandhi. I mean, these are characters who are so dramatic. There's always the tendency to dramatize all these characters and make them work. But my story was not about them. My story was about a young woman who's facing the conflict. So, you have to curb your tendencies. You're getting away, the narrative must not get away from the story. You must, when it gets away, you must bring it back. For example, it is so easy to say, oh, Yahya did this, and then Bhutto did this, and Mujib did this. It's so easy to write about these things because you know so much about these people, and there's so much drama connected to them. But then it is not essential to your story, so you have to bring it back. You have to bring it back to the story. So as I said, there is only that distance you can go with the core of your story. You have to always bring it back. And in a novella, like you are planning on writing, or a short story that you are planning on writing, this is even more important because you don't have that much luxury of words. The number of words. I mean, you can cut off that many the's only. You still have to use your words. So exposition, it does not read well in a novel, but an exposition reads very well in a blog, for example. So if you were a blogger, you could probably get away with this, And but as a imaginative of creative writing, this would, you'd have to work a lot more. Okay? Thanks for sharing. Yes.
सुनो के दिल की कसाफतों को मिटाओ पहले, बुझाओ पहले उन दियों को, गुमान जिन पे तुम्हारा होगा, तुम्हें बचाएंगे रास्ते के पेचोखम की उलझनों से, मुश्किलों से। सुनो ए नादां, ये मसनूई रोशनी तो आर्जी है, ज़रा सी ही देर नूर है फिर तीरगी है, नज़र के धोखे पे एतबार दीवानगी है। यही घड़ी है, यही घड़ी है कि खुद को खुद ही संभाल लो तुम, कि दिल में जज्बे वो पाल लो तुम, भरोसा करना जो खुद पे सिखा दें, जला के कुंदन तुम्हें बना दें।
You must come to the poetry bazaar tomorrow. We're having a poetry session tomorrow where you can read.
Okay, inshallah.
Yes.
This is article named Balochi should be taught as compulsory subject in Karachi as well as in Balochistan. Lyari is the oldest area of Karachi. The majority of population is Baloch. The inhabitants of Lyari are hardworking and loving and their mother tongue is Balochi. The Baloch came from Balochistan. We can say that Baloch is one of the biggest communities of Pakistan because Baloch is dwelling not only in Balochistan but in interior Sindh, central Punjab, south Punjab and in KPK too. Their population is not in Pakistan only but in various countries of the world also. They are dwelling in Iran in Balochistan province, that is the second biggest province of Iran. In the Helmand, Nimroz and Turkmenistan, the provinces of the Afghanistan. They are in great number in Gulf and Zanzibar in South Africa. And you must be astonished to hear that in these all countries, Baloch speak in their own mother language. The Balochi language is 11,000 years old. We can find the proof from Mehrgarh and in the first imperial period of Iran, which had been existed for 350 years, was called period of Hamkha Manshi. In this period, the old Balochi words were used. It means the Balochi is one of the oldest language of Iran too, and this research has been proved by Major Mokler, the British linguistic researcher, in his book. The Poetry of Balochistan, Mr. Alphabin also mentioned it, so it is proved that Balochi is the oldest language of not only Pakistan but of the world also. So the people who are in the favor of to educate children in their own mother tongue shall agree to this, that the Balochi should be taught as compulsory subject at primary level, not only in Balochistan but in Lyari too, so that the children can not be confused. To gain knowledge in future, they can improve the literature as writers, poets and researchers. But alas, the government of Pakistan never gave attention to improve this language. You can say it is deprived language. The people like late Said Hashmi, Sabah Dashtiyari and other well-known poets, writers and thinkers did their best to create Balochi dictionary and grammar, and now Mr. Professor Ramzan Bamri, the head of Said Reference Library, is trying his best to prepare the primary level books in Balochi. The government should appreciate and encourage them and help them to preserve this historic language. So if we want to preserve this language, we should give attention to its literature and so on. If we want to improve its literature, then we will have to make arrangements to teach Balochi at primary level as compulsory subject.
Yeah. The thoughts are very noble, but the minute you started telling me that Baloch live here, there and there and there, I sort of tuned off, because it's too long. You can't hold a reader's attention by saying कि वो इधर भी रहते हैं और उधर भी और उधर भी और उधर भी,
I want to say the oldest language.
Yes. So you strayed. You could not hold my attention because it was too convoluted. And also, when you are saying कि you should do this and you should do that, that has to be couched in a better term. You can't say कि ये आपकी ड्यूटी है कि आप बलोच लैंग्वेज को प्रिजर्व करें, ये आपकी ड्यूटी है, इस तरह से. So your thoughts are very noble, but your expression was a little a little traditionally boring. It was boring. It was very boring. Because, you tune out when you use language, which is why language is so important. When you were reading in Urdu, it was fantastic, what you were saying. But in English, I think you need to have more mastery over the language before you can express your sentiments. But your sentiments are very noble.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. Any other brave soul? Yes. I could never have done this. Come up in front of so many people and read. This is fantastic. Yes. Give us your name and what you're writing. Huh?
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
I am Myra Edwin. I've come from Peshawar.
Great.
I'm a lecturer in Edwards College, Peshawar over there.
And what do you aspire to write? I mean,
I've been writing fragments. I've not been writing novels or short stories, but today I'm going to just share one fragment with you. And it's called A Broken Mirror, A Broken Image. Ma'am, are you on track? A broken mirror. She stares at her distorted image, disheveled hair, smeared makeup, dried tears, bloody knuckle. Something has died in her. The image doesn't move her anymore. She feels sick, cold, dark, confused. Where was my guardian angel, she thinks. A shrill laughter. Whose was it? Again. Who is it? Where is it coming from? Oh, it's the mirror. These 1,000 ugly faces laughing at her. A smile. She knows exactly what she has to do. That's it.
so this is part of what?
It's just part of what I've been, it's a part of a longer story that I'm planning to write. So it's going to take shape further on. But it's just a fragment that I wanted to share.
Very good. I mean, your phrases are beautiful. Your phrases are very well put together. They're very dramatic. And I think you're on the right track. Totally on the right track. And remember that when you're telling a story, the reader must always think, what comes next? What's next? You know, Scheherazade with her 1001 stories, what happened there? She was only able to survive because the king wanted to know what happens next. So a novelist or a storyteller's survival depends upon whether they are able to whether the reader is able to sustain or whether he's able to sustain that interest. Okay, what is happening next? What's happening in the next page? So that kind of suspense, as they call it, what next? What is going to happen next is very essential to storytelling, and I think you've got that very well done. Yes, very good. जी आइए. आपने अपने फोन पर लिखा हुआ है.
Yes, actually, I'm a event designer for this young architect. So
Great.
I just
Are
happen
you blogging?
I don't blog as much. I used to write much, but essentially I'll share a short story.
Oh, great.
Through my experience.
Is it a complete short story?
It's a complete short story.
Okay.
My experiences, are in today's world, our concentration level is like non-existent. So that's my idea where my whole thing is coming from.
Yes, I would like to comment on the short attention span also, because I don't believe that is so.
Okay.
हाँ, चलो. But you go ahead.
Okay, it's called The Blossom of Misery. A thunder ran within her. She turned to look back at him, leaving into the darkness. Her words were gone. Silence reigned a moment. Suddenly, all meaning of being herself was draining away on the cold stone floor she stood on. As her gentle feet trembled on the ground, her fragile body gave in to the upsurge that had started within herself. She staggered with no one to gather her, as she was thrown in the middle of the ocean of misery. So much was lost in this one night, and it had not even ended. Her soul was now an empty cauldron of hope that was just a few moments back from lounging with ecstasy of a starry night. The most beautiful painting that was torn apart by the painter itself with not a hint of mercy. A melody gone wrong all of a sudden. Her hazel eyes were now a flowing river of endless dead dreams, yet her face couldn't give away the expression of disbelief that came onto it when he said those words. For the first time, he could not see her in the eyes as he read out her verdict of being herself as her Messiah touched her with the fire himself. Today, she felt the mountains torn down in seconds. In the December cold, her numb face could not feel the warm tears with her hands, and with her hands that had always been the comfort of his warmth, she touched her pale face to feel them rolling down all the way to her sealed lips. Those red lips bloomed whenever a thought roamed around Those red lips bloomed whenever a thought roamed around in her head about him. There was blossom every time her eyes met his. The smile that it drew was the prettiest sight he could ever see, a sight of a true heart submitting to his feelings. Always were her wings delicate, yet she flew high and far, for he was always there to hold her if she falls. For her falling was just another reason for him to take her into his arms, for there she felt she belonged. Never did she imagine what it would be like if there was no one to catch her. Tonight, the reality devastated the immaculate dream. Thank you.
Yes. A short story is the most difficult, it's very difficult to write because you have to contain an entire universe within that, from the first line to the last line. You don't have many words to do it. You also don't have supporting characters. Like in a novel, you have supporting characters, you have the hero and the heroine or two heroes or whatever, but you have all these supporting characters. In a short story, you don't have the luxury of that. So you have to develop the character, finish the story, construct the plot, do everything within that short span of short few words that you are allowed. That makes it necessarily a short story. Now you've done that very well. I mean, you do get a sense that there is a story which is being completely told. The only issue that I have with it is that you have used some very trite phrases, like the cauldron, the empty cauldron. So if you avoid such trite phrases, your writing would become even more evocative than it already is. So keep at it. Yes, very good.
Thank you.
Keep at it, yes. But avoid cliches. Hannah? Yes. Are you coming? Great. The young man in front, you have something to tell us. No? Okay. Yes. Yes, Walaikum Salam. And what do you have, what do you aspire to do?
Actually, I'm working on a story and
Very good.
It has taken on a life of its own.
Oh,
so to
that's what happens, yes.
And right now I don't have much of the story to
You
share.
know?
I was just taking notes in my notebook.
Yes.
And there was this paragraph which was giving me trouble.
Okay.
So it
Yes.
won't make sense on its own.
Yes.
I'll read it out and then
Yes.
I'll tell you what I expect to gain.
Of course.
I turned around to face Monday Moore, my mind slightly hesitant at taking the first steps forward in that festival of people and vehicles. I think I was developing a phobia. Crudely erected tents spread over the length of Monday Moore, demarcating the tent in sections. Stickered vans, many with curtained windows, were parked inside each tent, their parking space defined by the wooden supports holding up the tents. Bright, flashy banners placed on top of tent enclosures caught my attention, shouting the names of all the different destinations in Urdu. There were a ton of places. Now, this is the paragraph.
Yes.
Yeah.
But tell us the context of the paragraph.
Yes. So this is an urbanite
Yes.
who has gone into a bus adda, which is a very traditional conservative place. And because he's an urbanite,
Yes.
traveling in cars and AC, so he is hesitant at taking the steps forward. So this paragraph is supposed to convey exactly that his fear, his hesitance at taking on and going, like, supposed to portray a fearful image of
Anxiety, his
his
anxiety.
anxiety.
Yes.
The description is supposed to bring out the fear
Yes.
in the character.
Yes. And this is so important, what the thing is that he's pointing out, that an anxious person is looking at something, and so whatever makes him anxious is what he notices, that's what he writes. So, this brings us to the point that you can write anything from several points of view. He could have written, he's portraying an anxiety of the person who's never traveled by a bus and he wants to travel and, he sees these things. Now, from the point of view of the bus rider who's looking at him,
Yeah.
It would also make a very interesting observation, you know, that what is that man thinking or that woman thinking of him. So, you know, so your language and your phrases have to also change accordingly, according to whose point of view you're writing. For example, if you're, and you know, always, it is always a very good idea in a novel or a short story to have one point of view. You can have multiple points of view, but it is always easier to have one point of view, or to have an omniscient narrator, as somebody who's looking at everything from up there.
Up there, okay.
You know, not from one point of view.
Yes.
So when you're writing from this anxious man's point of view, your task is very difficult, because you cannot talk about other points of view now. You only concentrate on what he is seeing. Na?
One perception.
One perception, which is why the I also becomes very difficult to write about. When you write in first person, I, because then it's only your point of view. But when you're writing from an omniscient narrator's point of view, then it is so many points of view which come together to move the story forward. But the observations are very pictorial. This is where you create the picture, you know. You know he's looking at something and these are the images that he's seeing, and it's causing anxiety in him. So it's very good. I'd like to read the full story when it's done.
Sure.
Yes.
I've actually done with the draft, and now there are problems that, like you said, it's just a question that you need to contain the story and not drift away. So when writing and it has extended, so like you naturally start to drift away, and by the time you read an earlier chapter, for example, you notice that this is not the central idea which is being conveyed in the other chapter.
Yes.
So how do I avoid that kind
You know, when you write something, and you know, because it's from personal experience, I think this is the best piece of writing ever. I can't let this go. This is so beautifully written. But if it is not contingent to the story, you let it go. You understand? You let it go. Otherwise, your story will not tell itself. You know, however attached you are to this beautiful piece of writing that you have done, for example.
Yes.
But if it is not moving your story forward, then as a short story writer or as a novelist, you have to let it go and use it some other time, in some other context. But for that story, don't use it. You know, because you've created it, you don't want to let it go, na? It becomes your child, but you have to let it go.
Okay.
Yes. So that is a decision you have to make yourself.
Right.
Okay, do I let it go or not?
Okay.
Yes, and of course, if you have a very experienced editor, they'll certainly slash it for you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well done. Yes. Do we have any more contenders? Yes, we can have questions, and for the club, if you register, we'll meet once in 2 months, I think. We will look at your writing. We will try to help you improve it. We'll guide you through the process, and then ultimately, I think it should be, we'll have a session in KLF to read out your completed works. So that's the prize at the end of it. Yes. What did they write? Why men kill? Women also kill, na? किसका था ये? Oh, should we read it? If she wrote it, we can read it. Read it out. But read it out, yes.
As humans, we want to be part of God. This is the oldest struggle of mankind. Non-God is most significantly associated with the process of giving birth and taking away life. And since women have taken over the process of giving birth and hence becoming a part of the process of creating life, so the only choice left to men is to kill. It is by ending life of another do they get this elation of having been closer to God, who ultimately takes away all life. And this is the reason why men kill.
Well, it's a very original thought. She should have stayed.
Interesting.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Like I said, you talk of birth and you talk of death. I mean, these are the two unknowns that you talk of. Every story talks of that. So, this is a very interesting take on the age-old concept of birth and death, that women give birth and men kill. Men give death and women kill. The women give life and men take life. I never thought of this division in this form. Whoever she is, we must call her. Does she leave an email?
Have her email address and her number.
Yes, let's write to her. Yes, she's on to something. Great. Yes.
Anyone else have any questions or anything
Yes.
they want to read?
Sophia, you've just come in. Ah, okay. She was my student, so yes. I didn't make her come. Yes. Yes, please. Please, Sophia, yes. Come. Sophia is an engineer. I taught her engineering.
Because of you?
Yes. Come. Yes.
Nice meeting you.
I think you'll have to read into that.
You know, I write for my own self. My name is Sophia. I'm an engineer, as Madam just told you. I usually write for myself. I hope I get connection to my Facebook, where I write and save everything. My prime interest, and I wrote to her yesterday as well, is that that I spent last 4 years in Germany alone. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I took her with me alone and tried to build my life there. Quite successfully, I built it, and then I came back. But it was a very, very different experience. We lived life in Germany because, you know, all you know there is about, is from all these Hollywood movies and how horrible Germans are and what they eat and how they behave and act. But my personal experience was different. So I thought I would write about it, and I have written bits of it.
Yes.
I still have to write full in collectively, and maybe I should read.
Yes.
On the last day when I was leaving, I wrote this piece, and maybe I should read that. So the title is Auf Wiedersehen, which means till the next time in German. All suitcases are packed, the heavy stuff sent, and most of it has already reached Karachi or given away as present to my friends or sold. I will leave Germany tomorrow, and sitting here at the dining table of a beloved friend, El Kasab, just recalling how much I have learned, gained, and profited in Germany. I came with a 4-year child alone to a city that I only knew from a day trip and its official website, where the only native words that I knew were Dankeschön and Bitte, and could count to 10 or sein. By the time I had found a wonderful kindergarten for my daughter and searched and found an apartment and bought everything that one needs to live in making, with only 3 rounds to IKEA and 1 to Real, and began to enjoy the summer and upcoming autumn, I realized that my project will not survive. 6 months into a new country, I started a new search, and this time for a new job. I literally applied for over 60 positions and got only 2 interview calls. And then I selected the one that turned out to be the best employer when it comes to work-life balance. I could not have been at every school event and could not have attended to every minor illness. Thank you, my employer and my boss, for being understanding. I rebuilt everything in Bonn again, from apartment to school to car. Everything again had to be organized and set up. I'm going back to start living a normal life with Reaz, who stood by my decision to go to Germany, try new things out, and himself faced a lot of music in Karachi, where he continued to live. Thanks for Skyping all the time, even if that means your 4 a.m. I came to know some of the most wonderful, ordinary people that are filled with compassion for life, the ones that are not looking for any shortcuts in life, the ones that are not at all greedy, the ones that value and cherish everything in life, from childbirth to death. There's always a moment for Kaffee and Kuchen, that means coffee and cake. The ones that are proud of their culture, their traditions, and their religion, and they continue to celebrate. There's always something to celebrate. Every 6 weeks, as I used to say, I rebuilt everything in Bonn again, from apartment to school to car. Everything again had to be organized and set up. I'm going back to start living a normal life with Reaz, who stood by my decision to go to Germany, try new things out, and himself faced a lot of music in Karachi, where he continued to live. Thanks for Skyping all the time, even if that means your 4 a.m. I came to know some of the most wonderful, ordinary people that are filled with compassion for life, the ones that are honest, the ones that keep their word, the ones that are not looking for any shortcuts in life, the ones that are not at all greedy, the ones that value and cherish everything in life, from childbirth to death. There's always a moment for Kaffee and Kuchen, that means coffee and cake. the ones that are proud of their culture, their traditions and their religion, and they continue to celebrate. There's always something to celebrate. Every 6 weeks, as I used to say, there is an event. The ones that plan their vacations look forward to them and enjoy them. They don't get measly American 15 days a year. There's a full 6 weeks time that has to be planned and planned right. These are the people that are not loud, not arrogant, not nosy pokey. And they know their politics. They are every bit involved in it, be that Piraten Partai. They are the ones that love you if they find something mutually interesting and will not talk to you if there is nothing. There is no pretension. I came and I didn't have any friends. Now that I'm leaving, I had invited 60 people in the farewell. The New Year, the Carnival, the Easter, the summer, the 3rd October, the Saint Martin, the Christmas market, and the Christmas itself. I will miss everything from biking along Rhine, living on Rhine, sledging on the small hill, walking up the Drachenfels, swimming in Rungsee, coffees with Elke and Bernadette, the red wine, Sekt, and beer with Susanna, and endless sessions of long conversation in my broken German. All I can say right now, thank you, wonderful people of Germany. You made our stay a memorable one. We will visit you whenever I can, and I promise I will write a book, of course, in English.
So do write. Do write the book.
Yeah, I plan to, but I have to start doing it.
Yes, and as I said, it will not happen unless you write.
Okay.
I mean,
what do you think?
Yeah, you have to write, and you know what the details that you have touched on. You haven't given us the details, but there are many images that you touched on. You know, the festivals, the school, the scenes, etc. Now, you know, if you elaborate on each of them, that will give you your book.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, but you know, maybe it will be a memoir.
Yeah, I plan
it will be
to
a
write it as
memoir of your
yeah.
stay in Germany. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
without judging, without being judgmental about this place or that place, you know, also without, but what I liked about it and the conflict that you created right in the beginning. Remember, there always has to be some conflict, you know, there has to be a protagonist, but there also has to be an antagonist, you know, who goes against. So wo jo antagonism tha of the portrayal of Germans in the Hollywood movies, that has to be juxtaposed against the reality of what they are. That is something you have to bring in.
I will try.
You will have to bring that.
I do that.
Because just saying it is not enough.
Yeah.
You have to say कि ये image portray होता है और असल में ये है.
Okay.
है ना?
Okay.
Do that. And good luck.
Thank you.
Great, Sophia. Yes. Yes. Any questions? There's a young man there. You want to read something? Yes? No? Okay. Yes, please. आइए.
Assalamu alaikum. Actually, I have written a poem regarding the life of the even farmers.
Yes. बस before you read it, आप कल ज़रूर आइएगा. कल 11:30 बजे हमारा पोइट्री सेशन है, जिसमें आप कोई भी आकर पढ़ सकता है. तो कल आप ज़रूर आइएगा 11:30 बजे. रूम मुझे नहीं याद है. सेम रूम, इसी कमरे में जी. कल भी आइएगा. आज ज़रूर पढ़िए.
My gala days. Peasants sow the seeds of wheat and happily talk when they meet. They would suffer long till the corn grows and patiently see the fluttering crops when the wind blows. Such souls never think of rest. Before the sunset, never go to the nest. How strong are they in their will and power? They want their fruits to grow like a tower. They are given no due fruit. If they wise, they only get chewed. Where's our integrity to such farmers who sow and grow corn in all corners? When they become happy and gay, or only wait for the doomsday? We must be merciful and open-handed, because the country's progress they have mandated. I pray to God they get all rights, undying sweet smiles on their sides.
Very good. Yes. There is a deep emotion involved in this, which I'm sure you feel. But do you think you want to use this language? I mean, why don't you use another language, which could be more evocative?
Okay.
I mean, English is not the best language to convey emotions. I mean, the English are very proper. So maybe, I would advise you, because your feelings are so deep. Your feelings are fantastic. And come and read this tomorrow in the same room at 11:30.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please. کیا لکھا ہے آپ نے؟
مائی نیم از طیبہ انوار احمد، اور ایک کہانی ہے جو میں لکھ رہی ہوں.
جی.
اٹ از ان پروسیس، اینڈ یہ جو اس کا سبجیکٹ ہے وہ 1971 کے ارد گرد گھومتا ہے.
اچھا اچھا.
تو آئی تھاٹ اٹ وڈ بی گڈ.
جی جی بالکل بالکل. ہاں میرا ناول بھی اسی پر.
جی اسی لیے میں نے سوچا میں کچھ حصہ اس کا پڑھوں گی.
جی بالکل.
اور جہاں پر آپ چاہیں مجھے روک دیجیے گا اگر وقت
ٹھیک ہے
کی کمی ہوئی.
آپ ٹھیک
یو کین ٹائم.
کتنا ٹائم ہے ہمارے پاس؟ ٹھیک ہے، بٹ ویل گیو یو جو پڑھیں ہم.
جی جی. اس کا نام ہے فی الحال گل مہر.
جی.
کراچی والے صادقین کا سال منا رہے تھے اور شہر بھر کے اخباروں میں شور بپا تھا کہ بنگلہ دیش کی مشہور مصورہ گل مہر پاکستان میں اپنے فن پاروں کی نمائش کرنے آ رہی ہیں. 1971 کے بعد یہ پہلی بنگلہ دیشی پینٹر تھیں جنہیں پاکستان آ کر اپنے فن پاروں کی نمائش کا موقع دیا گیا. یہ آنے والوں میں اکیلی نہیں تھیں، نیپال سے بھی 2 پینٹرز کے آنے کی خبر تھی اور انڈیا والوں کے ویزے بھی زیر غور پڑے تھے. البتہ سری لنکا سے فنکار اپنے فن پارے لے کر پہنچ چکے تھے. مالدیپ اور بھوٹان سے بھی ایک وفد کنفرم ہو چکا تھا. ایک طرف یہ خبریں تھیں اور دوسری طرف میری نظر سے ایسے اداریے بھی گزرے جن میں یہ بحث کی گئی تھی کہ تصویر بنانا حرام ہے یا حلال، اور کون سی تصویر حلال ہوگی اور کون سی حرام. یہ تھی سید صادقین احمد نقوی مرحوم کے اعزاز میں ساؤتھ ایشین فن پاروں کی نمائش. میں نے جب سے گل مہر کی تصویر اخبار میں دیکھی تھی میرے اندر ہر وقت کوئی چیز سیڑھیاں چڑھتی اترتی رہتی. حالانکہ میں اکثر انٹرنیٹ پر گل مہر کے انٹرویو پڑھتا، اس کی کسی نمائش کی خبریں بھی میری نظر سے گزرتی اور اس کے نام سے ایک ویب سائٹ بھی موجود تھی جو گاہے گاہے میں دیکھتا رہتا تھا. میں ایک صحافی ہوں، خبریں رکھنا میرا کام ہے. نئی نئی کہانیوں کی تلاش مجھے اپ ٹو ڈیٹ رہنے پر مجبور کرتی ہے. گل مہر کی شکل مجھے بھولی نہیں تھی، لیکن اپنے ملک کے اخبار میں اس کے نام کے ساتھ اس کی چھپی تصویر دیکھ کر میرے اندر کے صحرا کی ریت باہر نکل کر میرے ارد گرد پھیلتی گئی. اس گرد کو جھاڑنے کے لیے شہر تنگ پڑ گیا اور میں اپنا گرد آلود وجود لے کر سمندر کے پاس پہنچ گیا. اس سمندر پر میں اور گل مہر کبھی اکٹھے نہیں آئے تھے، اس لیے سمندر معصوم تھا، اس کو کوئی گواہی نہیں دینی تھی. لیکن سمندر کبھی بھی میری آنکھوں کے خالی کٹوروں کو بھر نہیں پایا. میں کبھی اس دن کے بعد گل مہر سے نظریں نہ ملا پایا تھا جس دن اس کی سالگرہ تھی. اس کی سالگرہ تھی اور میں اپنے شہر میں تھا، وہ یہاں نہیں تھی. لیکن مجھے معلوم تھا کہ اسے میرا خط مل چکا ہوگا. وہ مجھے بتا چکی تھی کہ وہ اس دن پیلے رنگ کی ساڑی باندھے گی اور کہیں باہر جانے کی بجائے اس نے گھر پر ہی اپنی سہیلیوں کو بلا رکھا تھا. وہ بڑے لمبے اور تفصیلی خط لکھا کرتی تھی. جیسے ایک دفعہ اس نے لکھا، جانے گل میری کھڑکی کو دیمک لگ گئی ہے، اماں کہتی ہے اسے جھاڑ دو، میرا جی نہیں مانتا، تم کیا کہتے ہو. ہاں یہ خط لمبا تو نہیں لیکن مکمل تھا. وہ مکمل خط لکھتی تھی، کوئی بات نہ چھوڑتی جو اس لمحے اس کے دل میں ہوتی. میں اس کے دل سے واقف تھا. ایک دفعہ اس نے مجھے اپنے ہمسایوں کے بچے کے بارے میں لکھا کہ کیسے وہ فوجی سلیوٹ کر کے دکھاتا ہے، بلی کے اوپر بیٹھ جاتا ہے اور اس کے بچوں کو دم سے پکڑ کر گھماتا ہے. اس نے یہ بھی لکھا کہ وہ شہد کی مکھی پکڑ کر کھانا چاہتا ہے اور وہ مکھی پکڑنے میں اس کی مدد کرے گی. اس کا ارادہ تھا کہ وہ برآمدے میں پڑے جالی دار میز پوش کو پانی کے نلکے کے قریب بچھا دے گی جہاں روز شہد کی کچھ مکھیاں آ کر پانی پیتی ہیں، اور جب مکھی اس میز پوش پر بیٹھے گی تو وہ جلدی سے اس کو دوہرا کر دے گی. کبھی کبھی وہ اداس بھی ہوتی تھی. میں نے اسے کبھی نہیں بتایا کہ مجھے اس کی اداسی والے خط زیادہ اچھے لگتے ہیں. اسے شاید خود ہی یہ بات معلوم ہو. مثلاً ایک دفعہ اس نے لکھا کہ میں چاہتی ہوں کہ اماں کبھی کبھار تم سے اردو میں بات کیا کرے. میں اس کے ساتھ ہمیشہ اردو بولتا تھا اور وہ بھی میرے ساتھ بہت شستہ اردو میں بات کرتی تھی. اسے بہت سی اردو شاعری بھی یاد تھی. میں نے اسے کبھی یہ احساس نہیں ہونے دیا کہ مجھے شاعری میں خاص دلچسپی نہیں ہے. میں اس سے شعروں کے معنی پر بات بات کیا کرتا تھا وہ میری بات بہت غور سے سنتی اور اگلی بات چیت میں اس کا حوالہ بھی دیتی. مثلاً غالب کے ایک شعر ہم کہاں قسمت آزمانے جائیں تو ہی جب خنجر آزمانا ہوا میں اس نے دونوں مصروں میں آزمانے کی ترکیب کے مختلف استعمال کی بہت تعریف کی. میں نے تھوڑا بہت حساب کتاب لگایا اور پھر اس کے سامنے قسمت کو خنجر اور خنجر کو قسمت بنا ڈالا. اس نے میری بات اپنی ڈائری میں نوٹ کر لی. وہ چاہتی تھی کہ اس کی اماں بھی اردو کے چند ہی لفظ بول لیں لیکن اس کی والدہ کی ایسی کوئی خواہش نہ تھی. وہ اپنے حال میں خوش تھیں اور بنگلہ اخبار بڑی باقاعدگی سے پڑھا کرتی تھیں. میں نے گل مہر کو کبھی اردو گیت گاتے نہ سنا تھا. اس کی آواز بہت میٹھی تھی یا شاید مجھے لگتی تھی. وہ ہمیشہ بنگلہ گیت گایا کرتی اور کبھی کبھی گاتے گاتے ہنس دیتی. اس نے کبھی گیتوں کی شرح نہ کی تھی. میں اس سے بولوں کہ معنی پوچھتا تو ہنس کر کہتی اتنی بنگلہ تو تمہیں آتی ہے. میں اس سے گیت لکھوا لیتا لیکن کبھی میں نے کسی سے ان گیتوں کا ترجمہ نہ کروایا. میں نے بھی یہی سوچا کہ اتنی بنگلہ تو مجھے آتی ہے. اپنی اماں کے اردو نہ بولنے پر وہ اداس ہوتی تھی. مجھے یہ اداسی کبھی سمجھ نہ آئی لیکن مجھے وہ اداس بہت خوبصورت اور پرکشش لگتی. اس کی کالی آنکھیں سرمئی ہو جاتیں, اس کا دھیان کہیں دور چلا جاتا اور وہ اپنے بالوں کی چٹیاں کھولنے بنانے لگتی. اکثر میں کوشش کرتا کہ جب وہ چٹیاں کھول لے تو میں اس کی توجہ ادھر ادھر کی باتوں میں لگا دوں اور وہ دوبارہ بال باندھ نہ سکے. کبھی کبھی وہ میری اس چالاکی میں میرا ساتھ دیتی اور چٹیاں کو 2 بل دے کر ہاتھ وہیں روک دیتی اور آسمان کی طرف دیکھتے ہوئے کوئی بات شروع کر دیتی. ایسے ہی موسم میں اس نے بہت سی تصویریں بنائیں. وہ ایک عرصے سے تصویریں بنا رہی تھی. میں اس سے اکثر پوچھتا تھا کہ تم اتنی ساری تصویروں کا کیا کرو گی؟ ہر بار اس کا جواب مختلف ہوتا. مثلاً ایک دفعہ اس نے کہا کہ ان سب تصویروں کو وہ مصر میں لمبی انگلیوں والے رامسس بادشاہ کے پاس چھوڑ آئے گی یا پھر تاجدار کبوتر کو کہے گی کہ انہیں اڑا کر اپنے قبیلے کے پاس لے جائے. پھر ایک دفعہ اس نے کہا کہ وہ ان تصویروں سے ایک گھر بنائے گی جن میں ایک کچھوا رہا کرے گا. کچھوا سارا دن دیواروں کے پاس چلتا پھرتا رہے گا اور اکیلا کھڑا بہت دیر تک اس کی ہر تصویر کو غور سے دیکھے گا. ہاں, جس دن اس کی سالگرہ تھی اور وہ اپنی سہیلیوں کے ساتھ بیٹھی میری باتیں کر رہی تھی اس دن اس کے گھر میں بہت سے کالے بوٹ داخل ہوئے اور پھر اس کے گھر کے باہر سے کٹی ہوئی سیاہ چوٹیاں ملیں. میں نہ تو گواہ تھا, نہ میرے پاس کالے لمبے بوٹ تھے اور نہ ہی میں نے کبھی خنجر سے کسی کی قسمت کا فیصلہ کیا تھا. پھر بھی میرے اوپر ایک دیوار آ کر گر گئی جیسے میں نے ہی قسمت کو خنجر اور خنجر کو قسمت بنا ڈالا ہو. میں جاتے ہوئے اپنے ساتھ کچھ بھی نہ لے کر گیا لیکن انہوں نے مجھے سرحد پار جانے نہ دیا. مجھے پتا چلا کہ درمیان میں ایک دیوار آ چکی ہے لیکن تب مجھے معلوم نہ تھا کہ اس نئی دیوار کے باوجود ہمیں ہمیشہ 3 دیواروں والے مکان میں رہنا پڑے گا. میرے کچھ جاننے والے تھے. میں چاہتا تو غیر قانونی طریقے سے دیوار کے اس پار جانے کی کوشش کر سکتا تھا لیکن میں نے سوچا کہ اب میرا جانا ایک حماقت ہوگی. مجھے اپنے روابط استعمال کرنے چاہیے. خط لکھنے سے بھی بات بن جائے گی. جو ہونا تھا وہ تو ہو چکا. اب وقت اور کوشش ضائع کیے بغیر مجھے اس کی تلاش اور اس کے بچے کھچے وجود کو بچانے کی کوشش کرنی چاہیے. میں نے خط بھی لکھے اور پتہ وتا بھی کروایا لیکن اس کا بچا کھچا وجود میرے خطوط کے ہاتھ نہ لگ سکا. مجھے اس دن کے بعد گل مہر کا کوئی خط موصول نہ ہوا. مجھے بہت حیرانی تھی کہ وہ آخر اب پاکستان کیوں آئی ہے. مجھے لگتا تھا کہ سمندر اب زیادہ دیر تک معصوم نہیں رہ سکتا. اسے بھی کوئی نہ کوئی گواہی دینی پڑے گی. اگر میں نہیں تو یہ تو وہاں موجود تھا.
آئی تھنک یہاں پر بہت اچھی طرح آپ اس کو روک سکتی ہیں
جی
کہ گواہی کا جہاں تک ہے تو یہ کہ you know it is a very it's a very soft story. For example, it's very soft. وہ تو ہے. The flow is fantastic. The flow of the language is very, very good. The only thing is that maybe the letters have been repeated. You know, the repetition should be curtailed. You know, the words, yes, the words. And also that you know, if this book is about, you call it an epistolary. That you talk in terms of letters from one to another. You know, this novel or novella, you know, could be turned into one of those. It could be turned into letters. It could be turned into a letter from Gul Meher to the protagonist, and the protagonist to Gul. It will become very effective then. Ki just instead of telling us in between what is happening, aap letters de sirf. So it is in terms of letters. Everything is happening within letters. I think that will be very effective. You know, so that wo jo symbolic bhi hoga phir. The symbolism will, because you've created that symbolism of the walls. You know, that will also then be very effective. Okay, there is a whole novel called Clarissa, which is almost 1500. If you read it, Clarissa Harlow, and it is just letters. It is just letters between two people, and the entire story is told within those. So I think that would be a very effective mode for you, if you can manage that. If you can cut it up into, you know, letters from here and letters from there, and that will also give you two voices. It will give you the voice of Meher Gul and the other person, instead of having just Meher Gul's voice. Try that. I think it will be very effective. I don't know in Urdu literature if that has ever been done, but it could be a first.
It's been done in Mustansir Santar's book,
Yes.
Jalaha or Dakia.
Acha.
He has been using
Yes.
letters, and I actually, when you said it, I've been writing letters
Yes.
as a more
Because it's
medium
a
of fiction.
fantastic form. There are so many very, very good novels which are based on letters, just letters. And you know from the point of view, you know, कि किसने लिखा है और क्या है. It's beautifully done, and very, very well done. Good.
Thank you.
Very good story. And that is the basic. You have it. You have the basic. It's very good. And you also have a good flow of language. At least when you read it. That's another thing. Okay, you must always read out to yourself what you have written. Because when you read it aloud, you know, एक तो होता है ना आप पढ़ रहे, when you read it aloud, तब आपको उसकी rhythm पता चलती है ना कि कहाँ पर ये break हो रहा है. By rhythm, I don't mean poetic rhythm. But I mean the rhythm of your story, the rhythm of your language. कि ये break तो नहीं हो रहा, you know, this, sometimes when you read aloud, you say कि no, this is not what should be, you know, maybe I should use another word in its place. So I think reading aloud is very important, and you read very well. That's really good. Great. Yes.
Well, I have got one question.
Yes.
You suggested that before undertaking any writing exercise, one should read and read. But the thing many people might want to know that when should one feel that reading has been enough and now come to the business of writing? Because you can read for 100 years and still you feel that I should read more.
No.
In the busy life, when you are required to do work
Exactly.
from 9 to 6 or 7,
Yes.
you can spare an hour or two a day
Yes.
for reading. So,
You know, these are judgments that one makes oneself, and I think one doesn't have to read and then write. One writes and then reads also. You know, I mean, पहले तो आप पढ़ते हैं for pleasure, है ना? कि you've read certain things for pleasure, or because you were made to read it in literature class, for instance. But after you have written what you have to write, you're not going to say, I'm now finished reading, so I'm going to write, you know. Once you have the urge to write, once you have a story to tell, and once you have written out all that you want to write, then you go back to all your reading and decide, you know, is this the form I want to have? So it's more like, it's not one thing giving way to another, but both happening simultaneously. You know, and reading is something that you never stop doing, never. Even the only time I think I stopped reading the newer works or older works was when in that 3 or 4 or 6 months that I was actually writing, because at that time you don't want to be distracted by anything else. But after that you have to, you know, start. It took me 6 years to finish my novel, so it's not that you know, time is yours, you know, it depends on you, your own experience.
writing is such an exercise for a busy man that it involves a lot of
Yes.
time. No?
Yes, yes.
You can spare time at the little time at your disposal either for reading or writing. It's
Yes.
a trade-off. No?
Yes, yes.
You can't have simultaneously both things. You have to give up one in favor of the other.
I hope you don't give up writing in order to read. I mean, you know.
Sometimes I do feel that it is an hour to stop reading, but still one feels that
It's all your own judgment, you know, it's all, and you know how much, some people finish a novel in 2 months, 1 month, 7 days. You know, like I said, it took me 6 years. It took you know, it takes years and years sometimes, and sometimes it's just a matter of weeks. So it all depends upon your own time, the time that you can give. And I will tell you also that you cannot make a living out of writing.
It's just
That's
a hobby.
like any art. Like any art, you cannot make a living out of art. Even in this, even in the West, you can't. You know, so you usually need a day job. But I think, but you know, you must remember that everything you do is an experience which you can use in your writing. You know, the act of eating, the act of falling asleep, the act of anything, you know, your relationships, your observations, these all become part of your, part of the tools that you can use for writing. Na? So for, you do not stop experiencing something because you want to write. Because writing is necessarily about that. है ना? तो आप जो अगर आप कोई जॉब करते हैं मसलन I think there are many novels that have been written on work on you know on offices and what they do, and provides a perfect place, you know, where you hate your boss and you hate your work, and I've never come across anyone who would say I love my work so I'm going to write about it. You know, it's very rare. You love your work, huh? We all hate the hours, etc. So you know, and hate is a very potent thing to write about, as is love. So, yes, everything is grist for your mill, you know, as they say. Yes.
Ma'am, just want to ask one thing. How to tackle the writer's block?
Writer's block? By reading. By reading, you know, you say, okay, now what do I do from now? Let me look at Proust. You know, Proust wrote 600,000 words. 600,000 words. He's got his thing is six volumes, you know, and you know, he used to stop. He used to stop and then read other things. Go and not just read, experience life, because what you're writing about is life, you know, and it'll come back. You go and experience whatever you want to do, whatever conflict you want to get into, whatever experience you want to get into, and it will come back. But remember, you cannot write unless you're a master of language. And the mastery of a language cannot be taught, it is learnt. It is learnt through the words of others, not from television. It's learnt from actually, you know, yes.
I usually write humorous stories, but when I'm trying to write a serious story, I usually find that the main character that I'm writing, they're always the same, a little same. All of my character developments usually end up being the same person. Like all of my main characters in all of my stories.
Yes.
So how to get myself out of that, because in the end, वो लगता है कि एक ही लड़की के बारे में लिख रही हूँ मैं अलग-अलग story.
Yes. So you know, this is a very difficult exercise to do. But you know what you can do is write about each of those characters in isolation, not interacting with each other.
I did that, and
Yes.
all of my other characters are fine, they're very different. But when I come to the main character and the way she acts, it's always the same. And I don't know how to differentiate that.
You'll have to again put her in isolation and let her, and no, but you know what you can do is keep thinking, you know, what is it that she's doing which is the same as others, and do the opposite. Or in the same story, across
all different stories that I write, the protagonist, if it's a serious story I'm writing, the protagonist always comes out like the same character.
Yeah.
Has the same personality traits, he reacts in a similar manner, and then that happens in like every single story I write. So I don't know.
You'll have to work very hard to get away from this. Unless, of course, many writers, you will find that this happens in many writers. Okay? You will find the same characters throughout, you know. What you can do is, you can maybe have the same but give her a lesser role. Let one of your other characters assume a greater role in your story. You know, one of your other writers who's also fully formed, you can give her a greater role and see, her or him, a greater role. Turn the story around and see what happens. Because what happens is that characters take on a life of their own, don't they? Because, you know, they become, yes, she's saying this, she's doing this, you know, but put her in a different scenario altogether. If you're writing about a person in Karachi, for instance, in Karachi living in defense, put her somewhere else. You know, but that is where your creativity comes in, your imagination comes in, na? And your own experience also comes in. Have you observed somebody who is different? Because it's always your own, you know, your characters always tend to be yourself. It's always like that. So try to put yourself in a different situation and see what you would react. It needs a lot of imagination. Yes?
I'm writing a science fiction story and then I'm writing a real life story, but the character, the person is the same in the end.
Yeah.
That happens with
Because you can't get away from yourself.
Yes, but then she's
Because
not
it is
like
that.
me. That person isn't like me, so.
Maybe it's somebody who you'd like to be.
She's by God.
Okay, good. You like the character though. Huh? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having the same character.
Then I want to explore more.
Yes, yes, yes. So, you know, again, look at now when you read a book, any book that you read with multiple characters, see what differentiates them. What mannerisms differentiate them, you know. What voice, it's a question of voice. You know, what is the voice that you give. So you'll have to do some exercises. I can suggest some. We can work it out. So, you know, do some exercises, you know. Put somebody in a situation and actually, you know, do this. For example, you know, we had an exercise which I had given to my club and I said, there is a word known as, I love the word, but it's very infrequently used and the word is indelible. It's a very infrequently used term, but it has a lot of meaning. So write a story around that word. We're using that word, using the meaning of the word, you know. So is tarah ka we can give you exercises. Put this character from this story into another situation, into another world, into another point in time. And how will that character behave? That will bring the difference, no? Yes. Is there another question?
Okay, I'm not sure about it. The question I'm going to ask is on the topic or not.
Yes.
I wanted to ask that while writing a poetry, is it necessary to use rhyming words?
No, no. There has to be an internal rhythm.
Yeah, because I'm an English poet and I used to write. But when I read the poetry to someone, they are like, no, this is not a poetry. There are no rhyming words. The words are not rhyming. There is no rhythm in the poetry. No.
There has to be because poetry is distinguished from prose is this, na? There is an you know what poetry does is poetry can be you can memorize it, and the reason that you can memorize it so quickly is because it has a rhythm, you know, something that repeats itself. You know, there is a repetition of a phrase, a word, or something, you know, that is, which is why I still remember Wordsworth's poems because I was made to memorize it then when I was in grade 4 or something, you know. So it's because of that internal rhythm, and poetry has to have internal rhythm. And more than prose, poetry needs a greater mastery of language, much greater.
If I read a couplet for you, can
Yes,
you tell me that?
please. Yes.
Okay. Crawling in the street alone, wondering if I'm afraid or not. Okay, now tell me, can you say that it is a part of poetry, it is a couplet of poetry? Because there is no rhyming words in it.
It can be, why not? There's no rhyming word, but there is a poetic sense to it. You see, there is a poetic sense, there is a poetic emotion to it, na? That is enough. Wandering, I love the word wandering though. It's very evocative, yes. Come tomorrow, bring your poems tomorrow. Read it out, yes, yahi par hai, 11:30. Read it out and we will have two established poets tell you what to do. I'm a prose writer, so, you know, so we'll have two poets who will tell you what to do. So come tomorrow. जी, आप कुछ पढ़ना चाहती हैं? You will read out something? Or you have a question?
Sometimes when I write a character, I feel people are going to judge me after reading it. So how can I avoid this feeling?
Pardon?
Sometimes when I write a character, I feel people are going to judge me after reading. reading it? How
Yes.
can I avoid this?
Of course they will judge you.
How can
You
I
can't avoid it. You know, when you set something out into the universe, as they say, I mean, I'll tell you from my own experience. I took 7 years and I did not publish because I was afraid of precisely, because my story was about such a controversial subject. It was so controversial in Pakistan. It is so controversial in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan. Usme army involved hai, ye, wo, sab kuch hai. It's very controversial. And I was afraid. I mean, there was a fear in me. And there are religious parties involved also. सबसे ज़्यादा डर उनसे लगता है. So, I was afraid. Then there comes a point when you say, okay, I'm ready to face it. But you don't have to write about conflict. You don't have to write about controversial subjects. But whatever you write about, you will be judged. That is necessarily the manner in which it works. Some people will say it's it's not good. The others will say it's fantastic. It's very subjective. Reading is a subjective thing, so it all depends upon what your own experiences have been. So that is something you cannot avoid. And it is a fear you will have to get over. Yes. Depends, you know what you can ask, what is the worst they can do to me? And if the worst is what you can bear, then go ahead and publish. But it's a horrible, it's not easy. Yes, you're always afraid कि कुछ होने वाला है, I've had, because mine was a subject which was very controversial in Pakistan, people would not talk about it. For 40 years, I tried not to write about it, But then there came a point when I said, my family, my children need to know this legacy of theirs. But from that grew a novel, which is for everyone. And I've had backlash, of course. I've had hate mail. But I'm used to it. I was teaching at NED. Sophia knows, as a woman teaching in NED, and as a person who was progressive and not belonging to tradition, so I was used to this, Ji. You are? Acha, I left NED in 1998. Acha, okay. I graduated in 1974. Prehistory. From the old campus. So, and you, as you know, when you're up there, out in front, I was in PSF, I was in elected members, and the kind of hate that used to exist. So I was used to it. But for every writer, that fear is always there, and you have to, that fear is part of the process. There are people who were moved to tears. There were people who said that they could smell the place, they could see the place, the colors of the place. So women especially, because it is a woman's story, and there were women who related it to their own lives, and to the lives of people they knew. So to that extent, it was positive. But there was also a lot of people who told me that they were very hurt by the story. They were unhappy, they were upset after having read the story. So I didn't write, but it was not a happy story, so it worked, yes, I think so. I hope it did. I hope all of you read it though. Good, thanks. Thanks. Yes.
You've just joined...
I just came this morning, and in Karachi, wo throat mein, yes, sorry.
Welcome to Karachi.
Thank you. But I'm a Karachiite, just temporarily not here.
This formal writers club that it says here.
Yes. This is the formal writers club is going to be.
Or can you tell us?
Yes.
Just in brief.
What we are going to do is we are registering people who want to be part of the club, and it is only to guide people, to help each other, and we will meet. We will send out emails formulating the club. And hopefully we will meet once in 2 months and give tasks to each other to help overcome, just say, if there are any exercises we will give you, which you will, again, you may or may not do it. You may just want to write. And if you want to read out your stuff, we will give you helpful suggestions from established. Ji? Because writing does take long, na? And once in 2 months is all we can manage, na? Huh? No, we will, I think, meet in the Oxford library. We'll let everyone know. You know, actually it's more, we are also feeling our way through. है ना? Okay, we want to do this. The reason that I suggested a writers club is because we are already doing one in Abu Dhabi, and it has been hugely successful and hugely helpful to a lot of writers. In fact, there's one person who's publishing out of our club. She feels that we helped her. So I thought, you know, maybe it may help a lot of other writers. And we have Arab writers, we have bloggers, we have columnists, we have novelists, we have short story writers. So it's just coming together to help each other. Thank you. Yes. I hope we can put it together.
You will be staying here,
No, I keep coming a lot. I mean, Karachi is my city, so. And Abu Dhabi to idhar hi hai. I come a lot. So we will organize, Skype bhi kar sakte hain. Can make use of Skyping as well. Yeah. So I hope you join, and should we conclude here? Huh? So if there is any other question, or yes, and there is a lot of critical stuff out there about writing, which you can read, which you can make use of. There are books by James Wood, if you want to write down the name. James Wood ek hai, critic hai, unki writings, these are all available everywhere. Then there are writers like Edith Wharton, there are writers like E.M. Forrester. इन्होंने किताबें लिखी हैं on reading, on writing. So you can take any of your favorite writer and see if they have written on writing, and you can read them. You can take a poet like Borges has written a beautiful book on the craft of poetry. You know, you can read that. Then there is Edith Wharton, who's written the craft of fiction. Then there is E.M. Forrester, who's written on aspects of a novel. तो आपकी कोई भी favorite writer हो, आप उनको Google करें. I mean, you can Google and find out if they have written anything on writing, and read those. Those are very, very helpful. उनसे बहुत आपको मिलेगा. And of course you have to read. So तो ये पढ़ें आप. You know, इनसे आपको tools मिलेंगे ना. ठीक है? So we can conclude. I hope you read my book though, all of you. Thank you.